Hey, it's Juck, and welcome to Juck on Bucks Sunday show. We talked about the team all week. We talked about practice all week, and we only got to see a little bit here and there. The clips that were leaked out to us by the media, who was there for about 30 minutes on Tuesday, 40 minutes on Thursday. And I thought it would be really awesome if I could get somebody on the beat who was actually there on Tuesday and Thursday, someone who's interviewed all the new guys, saw everything up close and personal, and I could pepper him with questions. So I got the guy. And I think in getting the guy, I might have found the next favorite Buckeye media guy. This dude's awesome. I didn't even know it until I did this interview, but check him out. Dillon Davis, been covering the team for 5 years for the Delaware Gazette. He is a Buckeye fan through and through, born and bred, and the dude's privy to everything. Wait till you hear his takes. Let's get right to it. Dillon Davis. Hey, Dillon, welcome to Juck on Bucks, buddy. Appreciate you coming on.
I really appreciate you having me. I truly enjoy doing these things and appreciate you extending the offer. So happy.
Absolutely. So you grew up a Buckeye fan.
I did. I was essentially born and raised in Ohio, and grew up a Buckeye fan. That's just
awesome. That's important for my audience. We're just a group of fans here, and we just talk about things. And some of the things we talk about are how the beat covers the team. So I think it's really interesting to get your perspective on things. But
I think there's a negative connotation, like people think negatively of beat writers who are fans of the teams they cover. And that can be the case. That can be problematic if you let that fandom kind of influence how you're covering the team. But I also think at a place like Ohio State, where it's just different than a lot of other programs, it's kind of important too, because to understand what the program is, expectations, what it means to people, I think that's also important as well. So there's a fine line.
I totally agree. And I think most of the people who are watching this show agree. Sure. We like to know that they have a little bit of a background of understanding us, because if they don't, they really can't deliver what we're looking for anyway. But I prefaced before bringing you on that I found it really odd. And the whole thing about Will Howard has been interesting, because I did a poll yesterday, and basically it was, what was your impression when Ohio State signed Will Howard? Was Will Howard coming in as the starter? Was Will Howard basically gonna be the guy, or was he coming in to do a kind of a 50-50 battle with either Devon Brown or anybody else? And 82% of the Ohio State fans, the 200 random fans that answered that poll, said that they assumed basically that Will Howard was the guy or the presumed guy. And that is what several of the beat guys that we all watch that have the popular shows went into practice one thinking. And they said when they came out of practice one and then practice two, that they now had changed their mind and thought it was a 50-50 competition. So what are your thoughts on that?
I guess first thing I'll say is that one thing that I can assure people is that when Will Howard transferred to Ohio State, he was given no assurances that he was going to start. Like, this is going to be a battle. Devon Brown is going to be in the mix, going through the spring, going into summer and fall camp. My first impressions, what I still think are true, is that if Will Howard doesn't start for Ohio State at quarterback, it would be a disappointment. I think that they went out and got him with the expectation that he's ultimately going to win that job. I think he fits so well into what they're going to look like offensively with Chip Kelly leading that offense. So I think it would be a disappointment if he doesn't start. But I promise you that there's going to be a battle. And I think maybe part of the change in tune, and again, I can't speak for certain beat writers. We have our conversations, but they have their shows and whatnot. And they have, so I don't know where they're coming from when you say that maybe it's, seems more like 50-50 in a lot of guys' eyes now. But I think part of that probably would be from the fact that Devon Brown, his comments recently, we got a chance to talk to him last week. His comments, the fact that he's still here, the confidence that he exudes, he fully expects that he's going to go out there and compete and ultimately win that job, as he should.
No doubt.
And I think maybe that's kind of maybe made people realize that, Devon Brown's still here. He's still very much a factor. He's a player in this quarterback race. And maybe that's partially why it's come back to maybe to more 50-50 than 80-20 or whatnot. I think if you ask people candidly, I think a lot of people still probably expect Will Howard is going to be that guy.
And so do I. But like I did a whole show about Devon after that press conference you're referring to. And he absolutely is, to me, a great Buckeye. Whether he ever becomes a great Buckeye on the field or not, the way he represents himself, the fire, he's old school, and a lot of fans love him, and I appreciate that. I still think Will Howard is the better fit for this offense and ultimately will win the job myself. My opinion doesn't matter on it, and I'm rooting for Devon Brown. I would love for him to win the job. How did he look? It seems to me like he looked really good, and Will Howard didn't look like he was, so hot to start.
I got to preface all this by saying, and you mentioned it in the intro, that we've seen very limited time. We get half-hour windows. We get to see a scrimmage coming up, and that day we usually get to see an extended look at the team. It's really good. We get to see some of the team drills and things like that. You can see good on good and those things. Get a better idea there where guys are at, how they look, and whatnot. So I preface all this by saying it's watching guys throw on air, watching guys throw to stationary targets, things like that. It's it's kind of hard to see. I mean, Devon Brown looks just like Devon Brown has looked to me. He's impressive physically. Watching him just simple things, carrying out fakes and whatnot. You see some of the running ability that made him kind of a tantalizing possibility last year when again he was that close to winning the job last year. And I don't think people truly understand that it really was that close. I mean, he was that close to starting for Ohio State from day one last year, going to Indiana, which maybe is partially why, again, people are kind of realizing like he was that close last year. And with Will Howard being an unknown commodity, it's not crazy to think that Devon Brown has a good spring, carries it into a good summer. And next thing you know, he's starting, for Ohio State in the season opener. But I mean, he looks good. I think, again, with Chip Kelly's offense, I think both of these guys, and it's going to be really healthy, a battle, because they both have similar skill sets in what Chip Kelly is going to try to do. So the better of those two is going to play, and the better of those two is going to fit really well into what they want to do offensively. So I'm not ruling Devon Brown out. I mean, he has the physical makeup to be what Ohio State needs him to be at quarterback.
Gotcha. So we saw lots of shots of Quinshawn and Travion together. Quinshawn looks really big compared to the other backs, and they're all kind of cookie cutter, exactly the same size. He's noticeably bigger. He weighs about 10, 15 pounds more, and he looks like he's almost every bit as quick as everybody aside from Trey, whose acceleration out of a cut is just insane. But what were your first impressions of seeing Quinshawn out there moving around?
That guy is physically impressive. I mean, it's impossible for that not to be your first reaction to seeing him. Is that guy is just, I mean, he's just built to be the kind of bell cow that you want to have. But I think the biggest thing for Quinshawn this year is that, he kind of wore down a little bit last year. They rode him a lot, and rightfully so for the talent that he is. He is built to be a bell cow. You just look at him and say, that guy can carry the ball 25, 30 times every week, no problem. But he's going to benefit so much from not having to do that with Travion there. I'm so excited for Quinshawn, because the idea of defenses having to try to tackle him in the second half as they wear down and he's still fresh because they can rotate with Trey, man, that's something there. And, going back to that, it always goes back to the quarterback position in football, right? So with those two guys, I think, talking about the quarterback position, yeah, it matters who ultimately starts there. But if Ohio State can't run the football with a lot of success against just about everybody, if not everybody they play against this year, then they will really miss the boat, because that's the ticket. I mean, offensively, that's the ticket. But with those two guys, if they can't figure out the run game consistently this year, then I don't know what to tell anybody. Because
I totally agree. And when we talk about the running backs, I got to mention that I saw James Peoples moving around out there. He looks like he is ready to be a Big Ten back right now as a freshman. And I was really impressed by that. We had heard a lot of comments like that. I wasn't really buying into it, but yeah, he's every bit of what I would expect to see out of a second or third year Big Ten running back. And Sam Williams-Dixon, who I was told was going to be kind of a scat back, he doesn't look like a scat back to me. He looks just the same as James Peoples, not quite as quick, but every bit as big. What are your thoughts on those two?
With James Peoples, and I try to avoid the comparison game, because then people just box these guys into, well, if he doesn't become this, then he didn't reach his what he could be. But with James Peoples, he reminds me so much of another Texas product recently in J.K. Dobbins. I mean, he has the same build. They're both I think about 5'10", but they're thick, 205, 210, whatnot. I haven't seen James Peoples breakaway burst and things like that, when he's getting into the second level, because I haven't seen a lot of the team stuff yet. But James Peoples reminds me a lot of J.K. Dobbins. He has that same build. He looks quick, and he just did the positional drills that I've seen. So I don't think that burst and agility and jump cuts and things like that made J.K. Dobbins really good. I don't think those things aren't there. But so James Peoples looks like I don't say the future of the position, but he looks like a guy who, when Trey's gone and Quinshawn's gone, absolutely that guy should be waiting there. running back position such a funny thing,
Sure.
especially now in today's age of college football, because there's only one football to go around. And you look at a guy like Dallin Hayden, which, to his credit, that he's still here, but I am shocked that he is still here.
I wanted to talk to you about him next.
Yeah. Well, I've been, not that I'm the only one. I've been down.
The red shirt frustrated the heck out of most of us.
I've been beating that drum for 2 years now. When he came in the Maryland game 2 years ago, due to injuries and played really well in that Maryland game. Wasn't going well for Ohio State. They didn't have a ton going offensively, and Dallin Hayden really ran well in that game. And, I just, from that point on, I just didn't understand how this guy didn't have a consistent role in the offense. So, but the fact that Dallin Hayden's still here, credit to him, but I'm shocked by that. So, what does that look like in 2-3 years, when James Peoples is in line to take over kind of the primary ball carrier role? Hopefully he's still there. And I hate to speculate about transfers, but that's the day
I feel like going into the season, after dealing with that redshirt season, and probably everybody telling him, listen, just get through it one more year. It's you and maybe Trey next year. It's you and one of the younger guys. Yeah. And then all of a sudden he gets Quinshon dropped on his head and Trey comes back. And it's like, it's got to be so deflating after a redshirt year that I'm guessing he probably didn't want. I mean, that's just my guess. But just the deflating feeling that's got to be is insane, because every time he's ever been on the field, he's been extremely effective. I don't think he's super flashy or super anything. I think he's good at everything, but not super this or super that. He's just effective. He's a good back.
It's a brutal business, and you feel for Dallin Hayden because he's certainly earned the right to play. He's shown that he can play, and he's earned that right. Anytime you talk to Tony Alford, Ryan Day, Dallin Hayden's teammates, they all say the right things about him, that he works hard, that he's in there, he's a worker. But at the same time, again, in today's college football world, you don't not take a Quinshon Judkins because you don't want to hurt Dallin Hayden's feelings. If you got a chance to get Quinshon Judkins, you go get him, because that's a difference maker. So, that's just the world of college football right now. And like I said,
when we talk about that new world, I wanted to say to you that when we were talking earlier, the decision to bring in Julian Sayin on top of Aaron Nolan is a decision I don't think Ryan Day would have made in the past. It's something that he really struggled with. He's since come out and said that. I thought he probably was at the time when they were having that 48 hours of meetings on whether or not they were going to bring him in. And it is just become so much more cutthroat than it ever was in regards to that. And Ryan Day's so big on relationships that it's just something I felt like he was uncomfortable with. And he has since come out and said he struggled. When you saw Julian Sayin and Aaron Nolan, it seems to me like, that they're both really just getting started, and they're not going to be involved in this competition at all. But what about Lincoln? Because we got a lot of fans saying that Lincoln might still be involved in this.
Lincoln, and again, I don't think Lincoln is involved in this. If you talk about playing quarterback this year, he's not involved in it. For Lincoln Kienholz to start this year would be something would have to gone terribly wrong. There's no way that they went and got Will Howard, to ultimately start Lincoln Kienholz. I don't think that's a indictment on Lincoln Kienholz's abilities. I don't think that's the case at all. You can't take anything away, obviously, from the Cotton Bowl. That was just a very, very bad situation for the offense altogether, let alone such a young guy to be thrown in there to see his first real snaps. So I think Lincoln Kienholz still has some growing to do. Every time I see him, whether it be in the practice field or just watching him in pregame down on the field, impressive. He's a great athlete, and that nobody ever is going to question his athletic ability. But I don't think he's a real player in this. I can't imagine what would have to happen for him to actually be a player in this quarterback competition in the spring or summer. And I think
when he came out, even in his interview earlier this week that you were there, he kind of alluded to that, like, guys, it's my first spring. Like, he knows his role and he knows where he's at in this thing. But there are some people who out there who think that he is the most talented guy. And what's amazing about this is the 5 guys on the roster. I've never seen this in my time as a Buckeye fan, that there are so many. Every one of these guys has a camp of fans that are like, this is my guy. And it's really cool. And it's a really fun conversation. But one of my favorite guys on this team that came in is Will Kacmarek.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a guy that excited a lot of people because there was a gap there where there was no transfer portal activity. We weren't doing anything. And the first guy they brought in was Will Kaz. Like, okay, a depth position tight end. Will Kacmarek didn't come in thinking that. He made that clear in his first interview. The guy's confident. He was overlooked out of high school. He is one of my favorite kind of transfers, and that's a guy who plays at a lower level, works his butt off, excels, and then gets the call up. And I think this guy is going to come in and start and has the potential to really be almost as good as Cade Stover. I really do.
I think that the Cade Stover thing's an interesting comparison, but in watching Will's tape, and I'll admit I wasn't really familiar with him before he transferred to Ohio State. But in watching his film, he's quicker than Cade is. I mean, he's a big body, but he runs better than Cade does. Just from the film that I've seen, and that's not a knock on Cade. Cade was solid, but he runs a little bit better than Cade. You talk about flying under the radar. I think people are going to be very surprised. And again, going back to the kind of offense that Ohio State will probably run this year, I think Will's going to have a very big role in this team and a successful role as well, of being a guy that can make plays for Ohio State from that tight end position. And we've kind of seen, with Cade, Ohio State starting to throw the ball to the tight end more. And it's been a running joke for years about Ohio State and the tight end. Will they finally get tight ends involved? I still thought it was just a gross misuse of Jeremy Ruckert's services when they let him go through his career at Ohio State with the little utilization that he did. So it was good to see that with Cade. I think Will's absolutely the perfect kind of body and product that they can utilize again. And he's a good run blocker too. I mean, people maybe don't talk about that as much because of his size and the way he runs, but he's a good run blocker too, which again is going to be critical in this offense because of the way they're going to have to run the football and should run the football. So Will's going to be on the field a ton. And then, obviously in that 12 personnel, G will be out there, I expect as well. Jelani, probably still a year away.
I feel the same way about Jelani.
Yeah. The dude's physically impressive, no doubt about it. From the day he stepped foot on campus last year, you look at that guy and you say, oh, who's that? Oh, it's Jelani Thurman. Probably still a year away, still developing his body, and getting that body into, what it takes to play, high level college football, the highest level of college football. So it's going to be G and Will, in that 12 personnel, but Will has a chance to be a really good player in this offense. And, you mentioned a guy who has a chip on his shoulder because he's coming from, I think he was a 2-star from St. Louis, just no offense whatsoever, goes and, plays well in the MAC. He's going to be motivated to show that he can play at this level. And from everything I've seen, again, just watching film, there's no reason to believe that he can't play at a high level for Ohio State.
And as we talk about the run game, we saw, and I think a lot of people were surprised, that Carson Hinsman lined up with the ones at center again. Now, I think most people don't buy much into that. They think Seth McLaughlin's ultimately going to earn that job. But Carson Hinsman looked noticeably bigger to me. The guy looks like he's been working his butt off, and I'm happy for him with the way the season ended, that he's kind of seems to have put his nose down and just grinded. But Luke Montgomery was at right guard. That was a surprise. What do you think about that?
Well, starting with Seth McLaughlin and Carson Hinsman at the center spot, I think it would be very disappointing if Seth McLaughlin doesn't ultimately start at center. He's played a ton of football at the highest level of college football down there at Alabama. I thought he played well in that Georgia game and the SEC title game. So I think they brought him in here to start. I would be surprised if he doesn't. Again, not to say that anything's given to him, but I think it would be a big disappointment if they went and got him and he didn't start for Ohio State, because I think that's a big boost to the offensive line. Not to take anything away from Carson Hinsman, as you mentioned, he does look bigger. And Ryan Day alluded to the fact last week that he had a really good offseason, and just looking at him physically, it looks like that would be the case. But I still expect Seth McLaughlin to start at center. I think that if he doesn't, then again, Ohio State would be disappointed with that. That's a guy who has a lot of experience playing in some crazy environments, obviously down there in Alabama. So it's a guy who's not going to get rattled, and at center, obviously that's important. So the snap issue, I don't know what to make of that. I that's something that's going to be ironed out. If there's one thing that I'm okay with the center having, it's maybe a little bit of the yips with the snaps. So we'll iron that out. It's fine.
I feel the same way about that.
But with Luke Montgomery, I think therein lies the key to the offensive line, and by extension, I think therein lies the key to this Ohio State season, because going into last season, I think why everybody was so infatuated with the quarterback competition between Kyle and Devon, it was very apparent to me that the offensive line would ultimately dictate how the season went, because by extension, if the offensive line played well and Ohio State ran the football well, taking so much pressure off of those young quarterbacks, whichever one ultimately started, would have gone a long way. Ohio State never really figured that out. They never really figured out how to run the football. The offensive line was wasn't bad. It was decent, but they didn't run the football at the clip that they needed to help Kyle McCord out. And then I got accused of being a little bit of a Kyle McCord apologist at times last year, but I just felt like if Ohio State was better up front and able to run the football better, that maybe Kyle would have been better off. He would have been better off. Any quarterback's better off with the running game. So I think they're going into this year. We find ourselves in the same situation, right? The quarterback situation's up for grabs. We're not sure what Ohio State has there. And then up front, there are questions along the offensive line. Luke Montgomery is the key to that for me. I think that for the way Ohio State's recruited on the offensive line, and I've been on the record a lot of times talking about Ohio State's offensive line recruiting and how just unacceptable it has been.
Yes.
But Luke Montgomery is one of the gets they did get Luke Montgomery, and he looked like a guy who could be an early difference maker. He needs to be that this year. I don't know if that's at right guard. I don't know if that's at right tackle. Obviously, he's getting the guard reps now. Learned tackle last year. So Ryan said that he liked Luke Montgomery's agility and quickness to play guard in some of the run schemes that they're going to have under Chip Kelly. So maybe that's the ticket. So I don't really know. He plays guard or tackle, and that's still a lot to be determined. But Luke Montgomery needs to play. I know that he has to be ready to play this fall and be a difference maker along that offensive line if Ohio State as an offense is ultimately going to get to a level where you feel like you don't have to ride your defense to a national championship, that you have an asset offensively as well. I think Luke Montgomery is a big key to what they do offensively this year. Whether he can do it or not, we'll see. But
well, he's got the right attitude, and he's certainly now got the size. It looks to me like he's developed really well. And I'm going to ask you this, even though I already know what the answer is going to be, because every single person who gets asked it goes, okay, Jeremiah Smith, what's he like, man?
Well, I'll put it this way. I was doing another show pre-Cotton Bowl during bowl practice and whatnot. And that was about the time that the early signing day period happened, and Jeremiah signed. And we were talking about Jeremiah Smith, and I made the comment, I truly believe this, that if things were different, if rules were different, if Jeremiah Smith could have practiced for Ohio State during bowl practice, he would have saw the field in the Cotton Bowl. I don't know how many snaps. It might have been 5 snaps. It might have been 15 snaps, but he could have walked on to campus at Ohio State and went through a couple of weeks of bowl practice and saw the field, because that's how good he is. That's how much of a difference maker he is physically. And with 2 weeks to just kind of learn just a few things offensively to be able to, for Brian Hartline to be able to trust and putting him out on the field, I think he would have played in the Cotton Bowl. That's how much of a difference maker he is. So with that being said, this year, that guy is going to play right away. He's probably going to make a difference right away because he's that good. Not that he himself reminds me a lot, but it reminds me a lot of the Garrett Wilson situation in 2019, where they had some good receivers in front of him, but Garrett Wilson right away, especially going into fall camp, made it very clear that this guy belonged on the field right away, and ended up going on to have a very big role in that, in that offense in 2019 for a very good team. Obviously, I think Jeremiah Smith's the same way. I think he gets on the field and plays. He'll play, and that's not some big declaration by me. Anybody who sees him play,
sure,
can see he's that kind of guy. So, and a guy that
also from South Florida who hasn't seen the field early, but I think we've all been waiting to see who really has some pop is Brandon Ines. What do you see for him this year?
Brandon looked really good. That was one of the guys in day one that I just caught myself happening to watch a lot of. And he just, again, just running, routes on air and things like that, but just looked really good. And we haven't seen anything from him yet on the field other than that, that catch at Purdue last year. But to me, just looks really good. And, for a team that I think everybody just assumes Ohio State receivers are going to be fantastic, and they should be. Brian Hartline's awesome, and he recruits at a really high level. But you think about it, past Emeka, everybody expects Carnell is going to take another jump forward, but I mean, that's not a guarantee. I mean,
sure,
Carnell showed flashes last year, but it's not like, he set the world on fire and everybody could say like, hey, that guy's destined to be an All-American. So I think Brandon Ines has a chance to really turn some heads as a guy that, people, I don't want to say they're not expecting or he's flying on the radar because of how big of a recruit he was, but I think people have kind of forgotten about it a little bit just because he didn't see the field like Carnell did last year. And again, I saw myself watching him a decent amount during that first practice, and he looks really good. I mean, he's thick. I hate to box people in, but It reminds me of Jackson Smith and Jigba. I don't know if he has that circus, catch highlight reel package that Jackson maybe had right away, but just for body shape and type, he reminds me a lot of Jackson. And maybe it's just a number he wears as well, wearing that 11 out there. But no, Brandon Ines is going to be. I would expect him to be in the mix. How they ultimately spread out those reps and where guys ultimately line up at, remains to be seen. But he'll be in the mix, along with Jaden Ballard, who this is a big year for Jaden. Like, it's now or never for Jaden Ballard. Every year for the last 2 years, it seems like there's been hype around Jaden Ballard, and just doesn't ultimately lead to time on the field and playing time. But Brandon Ines is going to be right in there, and rightfully so. As young as he is, there's still a very high ceiling there for Brandon Ines.
I'm a Northeast Ohio guy, and watched a lot of Jalen Ballard coming out, and I was expecting. It just seems like something's not clicking for this kid. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a maturity issue. I don't know what it is. He's got all the talent in the world. I mean,
I don't know what it is either. And I would never speculate on, what, if it's something off the field or just, commitment, maturity, those things. Because I honestly don't know that, because it is perplexing, though, because physically, with the speed and the size, it looks like that's a guy who should be playing at Ohio State, and he belongs there physically. But what happens, in practice, consistency wise, so look, he wouldn't be the first guy who talent wise should be playing Ohio State, but for lack of consistency or lack of trust by his coaches, just doesn't see the field. Obviously that happened. So
you wrote a good article the other day about Sonny making the move. My honestly, one of my top 5 favorite recruits we've ever brought in, just a dude that I just absolutely have been enamored with since he started. Obviously he was out of position. We all knew that, but I respected that they were going to get him on the field no matter how they had to get it done. And I liked that a lot. Now he's moving into linebacker, where we all know he's going to be a better fit at. What are your takes? What do you think?
Yeah, Sonny's going to be on the field a lot, obviously. How that looks, I think, is still to be determined. I mean, he's a linebacker now, but I still think they're trying to figure out, just how to deploy him, which makes sense because the guy is just kind of he's an albatross. Like, physically, for as big as he is, he outgrew that safety position, which I think everybody knew was going to happen. Jim Knowles said as much the other day when we were talking with Jim Knowles. He said that, I think the idea was always for him to be a linebacker, but he wanted to start him at safety just to get that experience at safety as he continued to grow. And, now here we are. So I think they're still trying to figure out just exactly how it looks to get Sonny Styles on the field, but he's going to be on the field a lot. The idea of him playing that close to the line of scrimmage on a regular basis, it should excite everyone, given his size or his blend of size and speed. That's going to excite everyone. And then also he still has more than enough ability to cover tight ends and some receivers as well. So, I don't know what this ultimately looks like for Sonny Styles, but once again, when you go watch a practice, if you went into that practice without any preconceived notions or any idea of what the roster looks like, who are the guys to watch and whatnot, he's a guy that your eyes just gravitate towards because he just looks different than most people out there. And that's at a place like Ohio State to say like, this guy looks different than most people out here at a place like Ohio State. It says a lot.
For sure.
So how that looks, I don't know. That's it. That's probably one of the more fascinating things to see how that develops as spring goes on. And one of the things I'll be most looking forward to when it comes to being able to watch scrimmage is to see how he's lining up in team situations when you have good on goods out there. So I'm interested to see that. I can't really say a whole lot about how that's going to look right now. But that's an envious position to be in, to say you have that kind of guy. I know James Laurinaitis, I don't know, it was a few weeks ago, he kind of compared him to Isaiah Simmons at Clemson. And I thought that was a perfect comparison, where Isaiah Simmons kind of just outgrew the safety position, but was still such an athletic freak that he could still do it at times. He did it against Ohio State in that Fiesta Bowl in 2019 a little bit.
Sure did.
So I think that's a great comparison. And I think if Ohio State gets Isaiah Simmons out of Sonny Styles, that will have been a massive success. So absolutely.
And I really like that, we get to watch Cody finally gets his shot to be the guy. He's a great leader. It seems like the younger guys really gravitate towards him from my angle. And with Sonny and CJ Hicks, hopefully these two, growing into, coming into their own, and having him out there to kind of lead those guys, I think is a really great thing. But what I really wanted to talk to, and I think what is exciting me the most about this team, more than anything else, is the times that we have lost to upper crust SEC teams. I think a lot of us have noticed that the difference is in the defensive line, and not just in the starters, but in that second wave of guys. And this year, when we talk about Caden McDonald and Hero Canoe and a couple of the others, it looks like we have some depth there that could compete for starting positions. They won't this year, but they could be the guys in other years. And I think that's what's got me most excited. I watched some of the drills. I watched some of the stuff that you sent out on Twitter. They just look great. Caden McDonald looks absolutely enormous, but what are your thoughts on the D-line?
Yeah, I think that while unproven, I think the interior depth of the defensive line is in a really good spot. To your point about Caden McDonald, looks massive and a good massive, just an absolute space eater. I think he's primed to really carve out a really nice role for that defensive line this season, and Hero as well. Hero kind of came on last year and looked good in the time in the times that he got out there and got some opportunities. So I think the depth's in a really good place. It might be a little bit unproven depth, but I think it's in a really good spot, and certainly trust Larry Johnson to mold that into something come fall. One guy I want to add about in the interior defense line that maybe people are forgetting about or aren't talking a lot is Tywan Malone. So again, just in what I've seen and then the limited windows we got, you just look at guys and they just kind of stand out because they look different. And Tywan Malone looks fantastic this spring. I mean, he looks awesome. He looks slim, not a good slim for an interior defensive lineman. He was already big to begin with. Just looks really good. I'm just watching him, his burst in some of these drills and getting his get off and things like that. I was really impressed with Tywan Malone. We know he's a great athlete. He was a national champion winner, baseball player at Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. So we know he's a good athlete. I think that guy has a chance to really find his place at Ohio State since transferring here from Ole Miss. So
that's incredibly insightful, Dillon. Yeah. I've not heard a single person mention a thing about him, and I had almost kind of written him off. Like, all right, this guy's not going to see the field.
I get it. Yeah,
even though I was excited when he came in.
Yeah,
but I think at this point he's been there a decent amount of time, and we should be at least hearing something from guys like you. And you're the first one I've heard say that. So that's
the time
really
is now. Yeah, the time is absolutely now for it to happen. Yeah. It's now or never. Whether it does or not, we'll see. But I just and again, it's from what I saw in the limited windows. But just looking at the guy, he looked really good. I don't think he should be discounted at all in terms of finding a role in that defensive line. And again, to your point about depth, you're right. I think as programs like Ohio State have kind of tried to chase the SEC elites and kind of mirror what they're doing, one of the big things was elite defensive line depth, right? Just rolling guys through there, just constant, future draft pick after future draft pick. And so when it comes to depth, I think that at worst, Tywan Malone's going to be a really nice depth piece if he doesn't ultimately push to play a lot, behind Tyleek and guys like that. So.
That's incredibly insightful. This whole thing has been, Dillon, thank you so much for coming on. I hope to hit a couple more of these throughout spring, and I really appreciate you joining us. The first guest we've ever had on the show, so thank you for that. I got my first interview under my belt now. I hope to do better next time.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was my pleasure. Certainly, anytime you ever want to have me on, I'll be more than happy to join. So you know how to get a hold of me. I truly enjoy doing this and talking Buckeye football with people who love Buckeye football. So happy to do it. And as spring progresses, should have some more information, a few different little nuggets. As we get
That's fantastic. So, all right, buddy. Thanks so much. Have a great Sunday. All right,
Thank
talk to you later.
Well.
So I think the Tywan Malone thing really surprised the heck out of me. I wasn't expecting to hear that, and I was thinking that the D-line was looking great before that information. I did my first interview the best I could, guys. I'm sorry. I tried my best. It was really weird, but I think it went pretty well, and I am certain that you are thinking what I'm thinking about that guy. He's really good. Small town guy, small paper guy, and I think he's got a heck of a future. And the best part is he's our guy now. We got him for anything we need. Any questions come up, I'm going to bring him back on, and he is going to be happy to do it. He's already told me. So, Juck on Bucks, first interview, Dillon Davis. Thank you, Dillon. That was awesome. Sunday show is over. Juck on Bucks out. We'll talk to you this week.